Hello, Dumelang of Shane Ninjani. This is your guest, Islema Tebula. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you just joined us, welcome. Take a seat, sit down, join us, and enjoy. So today we have Mr. Nika. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Nika Machenjedze. I come from Save the Children.
Today's video will be based on what we're currently facing as a country. Like, since last year March, we've been facing COVID-19. People are losing their jobs. We are losing a lot of loved ones. And people are just going through a lot. There's a lot of challenges that people are facing, including mental health, like psychological. This thing has psychological effects on mostly everyone, and yeah, so we'll be discussing that, and he'll be further explaining on those psychological effects that people are experiencing during this time. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I will speak about this really at a more general and social level, how the current situation has affected people, and really looking mainly from the perspective of children and how that impacts families. And I should say this is an unprecedented experience that all of us, people who are alive at this point, have never experienced this kind of destruction to normal life flow in their entire life. I don't think we have had this anyway in the 100 years. And so the effects really have been great, and we have seen the effects broadly on our social life, on our psychological and mental well-being, on our economy, and everything that centers on a person really comes together and have an effect on a person. The shrinking of the economy impacts on people losing jobs, and people losing jobs impacts on how they live as a family. And how they live, if it's impacted, it impacts how they think, how they interact, how they feel. So it affects people's emotions and people's psychological well-being. And eventually that also affects how children's mental well-being is as well.
Yeah, true.
So in broader terms, I must just say there has been an increase in abuse. Okay. And abuse is one of the elements that we can see increases in the same wavelength with mental disturbances or psychosocial needs. When people are affected in their psychological life or in their social life, abuse tends to increase. When people are frustrated by losing their jobs, they tend to lose temper very easily.
That's how they express themselves.
Exactly, and then starts to smack children at home, kick dogs, and that's corporal punishment starts to increase in the homes, in the community, and we start seeing a lot of abuse going up, and all those are effects of mental health and psychological psychosocial needs of communities, which we have definitely seen in the COVID context, that it is gradually increased. And
okay, can I ask, like, was it only increased by the psychological effects, or alcohol also had a thing on that part?
Yeah, so you see, social influence is very difficult to categorically say this has been caused by mental pressure or psychological effect, or this was alcohol, because the two can also inter-influence one another. One can be frustrated by what is happening, or by the closure, and use of alcohol increases, and out of the use of alcohol increase with the mental state of people losing jobs or losing relatives who are dying, or people getting sick, getting frustrated and using alcohol as a mechanism to cope with the situation, and as a result, trying to deal with your mental health. So this is where I wanted to go immediately to say, this is actually pushing us into beginning to realize that we need to utilize psychosocial interventions to deal with difficult situations.
Okay.
As a community, we have not been very high uptakers of services such as counselling.
Do we really have them in communities, like the Black communities?
Yeah, so the accessibility is not as high, but there are areas and organizations that provides that. And the good thing about our environment in South Africa is that we can access them remotely as well. We can access telephonic psychosocial support.
For free?
Yes. Like for instance, we have Childline, which is an open line for children that they can call when they are frustrated by anything, or they feel in danger, or they want to know anything. They are free to call. And there are other domestic violence lines. There are other a lot of telephonic channels that are also there, so that if they are not in the community, people can access those. But even in communities, we have smaller organizations that are in most communities that offer that support or that refers people to where this support can be found.
But then seeing that there's like little awareness of mental health
Yes.
or mental issues, psychological things in our communities, how can one know that they're depressed or they're not mentally okay? Because people just, I know a lot of people just tend to, start drinking, and they just think it's normal that they are going through stuff that they don't know they're going through.
Very true.
Yes.
I think that really points to a gap that we have in our community. Awareness, mental health and psychosocial needs awareness. We need to raise that awareness. You know, the kind of energy we did invest as a country when we were trying to address HIV.
Yeah.
Where we made sure everybody knows about HIV, everybody knows what are the causes, everybody knows how to deal with it when it comes into the family. Nowadays, as much as it is still a problem, but it's more acceptable to know that I have a relative who is HIV positive, or somebody in my family is now positive. People can come and share in the family. There's still stigma, yes, but the community is more accepting. Emphasizing the point that we really need to start raising our community awareness around accessing services for mental health.
Yeah.
And also encouraging our government to support organizations that are closer to people in our poorer communities to provide mental health, because it's one of the least funded interventions in our communities, mental health. And also associated with our beliefs as a country, we can just believe if a person looks like they losing their balance mentally, we just think uloyiwe or whatever is happening, and we leave it, and people start living in the streets and walking all over, and that's it. But actually, some might actually be sick, they need medical attention, or they need therapy, things like that. I actually wanted to add in terms of the effect of COVID to dealing with mental health and psychosocial needs. Normally, in a normal environment, when you and me lose someone, part of our grieving is also processed as we go through the funeral preparations, the burying of the people, the funeral itself. It helps us grieve. But now with COVID, if somebody dies and they are dying of COVID, only 30 people could go, meaning there's a lot of all other people who were associated with this person who are not going to be part of that.
So they won't go through that
process that we are accustomed to.
Okay,
So we are really in an environment where we need to start adapting even how we process our loss. We might need counseling now. We might need to have other means. I've seen a number of funerals now, they are creating Zoom link to the funeral so that those who are not there can connect and be part of the process. So it's a lot of adaptation we need to start doing. And at the back of that, let's think, what is all this doing to children? And how can we understand the mental state and effect of all this on children?
Also, I feel like this mental health thing is only focusing more on women and children. It doesn't really take care of men, like how are they dealing, how are they feeling, because there's also that saying, Harry, a man doesn't cry, a man doesn't, like, also, as you were saying, we were mostly talking about child line, domestic line, which is focused more on children and women and just leaving out men, like,
Yeah, I hear you.
which also tends to increase our GPV, because I mean, if they're not expressing themselves well, they tend to be aggressive.
True.
True.
And that's very true, hey? And that speaks to a lot of our interventions. So when I speak about children, I am very conscious to make sure that I am inclusive of boys and girls.
Yes.
And when I talk domestic violence, I'm very conscious to make sure that it's domestic violence. It doesn't matter who is the victim. Because sometimes men are also victims of domestic violence, and we need to start opening that space for them to feel domestic violence conversation are not only for women. We can also reach out to get assistance, because the violence of domestic is not only physical, it's also mental, it's also emotional, it's also financial. So we need to take care of all that, and all those variants affect both men and women. And I really think we have a lot as a society that we need to adapt and change to make sure that our interventions are inclusive of men. That's why there is so much emphasis, particularly from the point of view of Save the Children, that we include boys and girls in interventions, making sure that there is no segregation among the two, and they grow up in an environment in which they realize we are equal beings. There is no one who is more emotionally stronger than the other. A girl in a family might actually be emotionally stronger than a boy, and that's difference of people and should be acceptable.
Also, there's this thing of saying, I don't want to talk to a stranger with my problems. Like, I don't feel safe talking to a stranger. So how can we help such people, like, in terms of, them expressing themselves well and, breathing and...
I think we should use, as Save the Children, we emphasize a number of models when it comes to dealing with mental health and psychosocial needs. One is community-based interventions. Our communities already have certain mechanisms within them to support one another emotionally.
What are those mechanisms?
And some of them you would find in communities, there is an old person who people normally run to when they have problems to go and talk to. All those kind of mechanisms should be utilized as community mechanisms to support mental health. But we also need to raise awareness among our people to say, seeking help is not necessarily going to talk to a stranger. Talking to a stranger is walking into the street and finding someone and start telling them your problem. But if I go to a social worker, if I go to a psychologist at the nearest hospital and speak to them, I am talking to a professional who is trained to deal with the situation I'm going through. And they are able to assess me and actually help me realize how I can go out of the situation I'm in, or refer me to a better service that I might use. And those use their professional training to actually assist. So there's a difference talking to a stranger and talking to a professional to help you.
So with clinics and hospitals, can one find a social worker or a psychologist for free? Also, like, what's the procedure to get? Because I know there's more like only one psychologist working in one clinic, and they probably come on like Wednesdays, maybe just once a week. So what's the procedure to get a psychologist if I'm not working and I'm just a person? True.
So there is more free available counseling services in this country than the one that is paid for.
Okay.
So social workers can be found in different places other than the clinic, like social development offices, NGOs that work with different issues such as child welfare. You have a social worker there. They work. You have organizations like FAMSA, Families South Africa, who are really focused, an NGO which focuses in providing counseling to families. You have a multiple other organizations that you can actually access that can give services. But broadly, when we talk government, social development is the first protocol.
Okay.
And social development normally has an office or a sub-office everywhere.
Yeah.
You would find a social development. That's a good place to start. Then you can be referred to a psychologist if there is one. You can be referred to other social workers if there is any. Because social development works with NGOs as well for some other reasons.
Also, there's this thing, I know it normally happens in like a lot of varsities. When you have like a psychological problem, you go to their offices, then you tell them that you have a problem, and then you want to talk to a psychologist or therapist or whoever. And then they make you fill this form. Let's say maybe you are currently, or at that time, you're feeling suicidal or something. They make you fill that form, and then they tell you that your appointment has been booked for like next week. That's after 5 days. And I mean, you just get...
You want to die now?
Yeah, you want to die now, or you want to talk to a person now, and they're telling you that your appointment has been booked for next week. So you have to wait for that week. And when it gets to that time, you already find you no longer want to talk. That's one of the frustrations that a lot of varsity kids are facing.
True.
And
that I have, I can attest to that. The university that I went to had a mechanism where that they called walk-in, where students are allowed to walk in, others are allowed to make appointment if they feel, okay, what I want to deal with, I can talk about it even next week. But there are those cases that are urgent, and students are allowed to walk in immediately, and therapists who are there then have to prioritize cases, because like you are saying, I might be having a session now with a student who I saw for the past 3 weeks. We are more in a stable space now. I can be able to explain to that particular student that there is something urgent, I need to help somebody else. Do you mind if we can shift our appointment by 30 minutes so I can talk to this person? And you attend to that, particularly if they are that urgent. And also to encourage students also to use telephonic services as well at that moment when you feel, you know what, I want to talk to somebody now. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think that's going to be it for the video. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you are taking care of your mental health. Prioritize your mental health. It's okay not to be okay. Stay tuned. Stay safe. I love you. Subscribe, like,